I'm out of Southern Oregon right now.
Okay.
I'm from Oregon. I'm a fifth generation Oregonian, but I've kind of went everywhere just with my bags on in search of work and adventure and all the fun experiences along the way. So here we are.
Yeah.
I'm back kind of in my native roots, just bought a house, have a family. I think part of being a contractor kind of threw itself onto me in that sense where I was a union guy and I had been union in
Mhm.
Oregon. I went non-union in Montana, was building 24,000, 30,000 square foot homes as the a builder, not as a contractor. And
Mhm.
then came back here, got a great job, left it for what I thought was a better job, got two projects buttoned up ahead of schedule and under budget, and then got laid off for lack of work with a mortgage and a baby and a stay-at-home
Mm.
wife. And no one was
Yeah.
hiring in October. So I just had to, essentially, I didn't know this at the time, but when you start being a contractor, all you're really doing is creating a job for yourself, like independently. And then the more ambitious you are without really even noticing and articulate and the ability to sell these jobs, you realize that you just made like six jobs and you don't have anyone to do them with you. So now you have to finish these projects and hire people and weed out everyone that thinks they're a carpenter that lives on I-5. So that was a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
fun.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
So, walking back, October, this was back October of
Yeah.
23 last
Mhm.
year?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is
Wow.
like, yeah. So I've had my company for a year now.
Wow.
We
Amazing.
it's been a crazy thing. We're growing huge like at this point, and I think I've been able to identify some skills and traits in myself that I didn't know I had before. Like the ability to manage people is essential when you're actually trying to build a
What do you
team and
think
not
that
just
is?
be oof,
Like, what
that's
yeah.
inherent.
I mean, what's
Well,
that
I
skill? Yeah.
well, I mean, I don't know, man. I thank God every day for the mind that He gave me and the ability to give me this. But at the same time, I look at it like that skill is being able to be highly functioning, function with very little sleep, and be able to compartmentalize stress on like not just a daily level, but a situational level. Because, like you
Mhm.
guys have said in many of your podcasts, sometimes your day is directed in whichever way the fires are burning, and that
And the
is a
wind
lot.
shifts sometimes.
Oh yeah, and like I kind of experienced a little bit of that this summer. I just kept biting off and biting off and biting off. Next thing you know, I had four crews of four guys going. I had remodels from duplexes to doing back decks to elevated second story decks, and I was in four places at once throughout the day trying to maintain everything. And it was like, it came to the end of summer where it just brought it down to, okay, one crew, four guys and me. Let's get an office situation going. Let's get ahead of things. Let's get organized and let's put 100% effort into these projects where I can actually start to navigate the direction I want to build this thing. And that's kind of just been that whole managing people. You don't really get to swing a hammer anymore. You have
Yeah.
to just make sure
Yeah.
everyone not only knows what they're doing with that hammer and that it's being built.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just reflecting back last week, getting ready for a presentation and about like one of my first experiences and the reason why I got into it. And it was really going back in time because I hadn't really thought that through very well. I was just sort of happened, like it was one of those moments. Life was there, opportunity was there, and just grabbed it. And I was thinking, well, what was it that excited me about that? Like, why did I decided to just go leap off and start my own thing? And I think partly was the freedom that you have in doing your own thing, but also the ability to like create something new. It's not just like raw dollars and cents. I think people have this illusion that you start a business because you're just purely a financial transaction, but you kind of think something bigger than that. And then I started thinking about then life starts happening where you start just getting dragged around. You start off with this like big grand vision, and then suddenly you're getting dragged five different directions just because it moves from being something that you control to something that you're now just responding and reacting to.
Mm.
And I love what you're talking about, Wyatt, of being like intentional in saying, hey, you want to maximize the opportunities you're presented with and not just like, you're getting dragged around, but at the same time, you're like, okay, that's okay to a point, but you want to be intentional with it, which is not everyone sorts that out ever, but in the
No,
first,
no.
the first year, that's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think too. I've met a lot of guys and folks that have been doing this for a long time, and I think that you do, whether you believe you have credit or you give yourself the credit to it or not, you have the 100% control of the direction and the growth that you will have. Like, I think a lot of people, like, their ambition is to, sell a $50,000 remodel once, and that one time, if you can do that 2 or 3 times a year, you're content, you're happy. That's the ceiling that you've created for yourself as an entrepreneur and as an owner of a construction company. Whereas for me, I came from a background of working for companies like Mortenson, that are like massive. We're building dams and wastewater centers and, stadiums and schools. And it's like you see, like, this is one of like 7 projects this company has going this year. And for me, I've liked doing the small projects. That's what it started out, but I didn't understand the concept of a ceiling, if that makes sense. Because I'd never
Mm.
been a contractor. I've always been a builder. So I was like, well, I could build a wastewater center. I know how to do it. I'm watching people do it on the coast right now that have no idea what they're doing. Literally, I know like some of these people are like, been on 3 of these. We have no idea what we're doing. It's like, well, why don't I have that? So
Mhm.
that mentality created that almost manifestation where like I'm gonna look forward now and say, like, here's the picture of what I want to create in a year. And no matter what's going on around me, I'm working towards that. Well, then that develops into something else because, well, now I've achieved what my goals were and I've given myself that level of psychological gratification. Like, I have this now. So like what am I going to create for myself next year? So I think without trying to establishing that plan and not limiting yourself is the way to grow this. Whereas I think a lot of people too are content to have, hey, I just want 1 or 2 guys working with me, one
Mhm.
job after
Yep.
another, happy to pay my bills. I don't want the added stress of all this stuff, all this driving around, all this time in my truck. Like, I used to like my truck, and now it's like, man.
Yeah. I think partly what you're speaking to, Wyatt, is the risk involved with doing what you're doing as well. And I feel like you're very like risk, almost you don't see the risk where some people are
Risk
going to,
tolerant. Yeah.
yes, some
Oh
people
yeah,
that say,
no.
well, that's
You see the
too
risk
risky.
at
I'll
2 in the
just be one
morning.
person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you can't sleep anymore.
Yeah.
When you like wake up suddenly, just like, oh my gosh, like how much money's going out right now? And
Yeah.
then you're
That
like, all right,
that
well, I
that
need
can
to
keep you
sleep.
awake.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, well, I think that's the biggest risk. The biggest risk is financially, like,
Mm.
and I think that any contractor that wants to go there, like any of the people that built America in general too, that was a huge risk. I mean,
Yeah.
no one starts big endeavors like so. We don't have TV in the house, but we do have
Love it.
documentaries that we've saved, and we watch the West with Ken Burns, the West, a lot. And it's like
Okay.
I was watching that with my 1 year olds just while we're building our playroom in here, and was thinking to myself, like, imagine the contractor that took the Union Pacific Railroad job.
Mm.
Wow.
Like, not only was that amount of money so vast at the time, still is now, but like like there's so many unknown risks that go into that. And that's I think every contractor on some level, if they can self-reflect, can, understand that you're gonna run into that situation where it's like you weigh risk reward, but you don't really do it on a conscious level. You're just like, I'm taking it, right? Like, this is a job that I want to do because this is the kind of stuff that I like, and I'm gonna build this thing. And it is, I feel like, you know, that ability to manage people and yourself, create a vision. Like, there's so many different variables that
Mhm.
you have to narrow down and create like a path for. It's its
Yeah.
own thing.
Got a question for you, Wyatt.
Yeah.
So, good examples. Do you have? Can you think back of people that you've worked for when you're
Yeah.
building, people that you worked with, good examples, and then bad examples, and why?
Oh yeah.
Like, what did you learn
So I
from the good
mean,
ones?
yeah, well, you learn from both, and
Yep.
you sometimes find yourself making mistakes that you had even called out just because you're in a different position now than you were when you were a builder. You see things differently from wherever you stand in the construction industry. But I would say my like experience as a builder has led me so many different directions that I got to see like what a high functioning corporate company is that builds and what like a really good company that started with nothing is, and builder operators to owner operators. Really going from the heavy civil industry to the residential industry set me up, I feel like, for success because I was used to grinding hard. But then now I got to be more precise with what I was doing. So moving to Montana was huge because I moved to Montana right when it was starting to boom.
Hmm.
Um, and I'd worked for companies that were, like, just to put this in perspective, an acre of land where I live with no road, no well, no electricity, it was $350,000 an acre, and people were
Mm.
buying with cash till there was nothing left. And then
Wow.
they're putting whatever like fourth home they ever built on there. So there was
Yeah.
essentially more work than there were contractors, and you could name your price. This is the house we build, this is the siding we build, this is this. So being in that environment and being only in this category of high wealth and high skill was super
Mhm.
essential to see like this is how it's done right. Because we have the opportunity to take our time to do these things. And you see the companies that grow that way. I will shout out in Southwest Montana, Jeff Goodhart and Black Mountain Builders. I learned almost everything that I could have ever learned, not just about being a leader with bags on, but also just how to, see this from more of a builder's light than just a laborer's light. And that was huge. No one could ever outwork you. You have to set like examples for yourself on your team, and you can't make the dumb mistakes like procrastinating is huge. Like you need
Mhm.
Well,
to identify what your job is as a contractor, right? If you're going to be the bags on guy, you're going to be the project manager, and then you have to fulfill that on the highest caliber every single day in order to continue to keep everybody busy, because the last thing you want are guys sitting, especially like in July. You just understanding what your job is and doing it on the same caliber you do it at work, with your bags on.
yeah.
Bad examples like you got to pay guys. I worked for a company that he would rather he was short on payday every day, every week, every 2 weeks. And it was like it's really hard to focus on your job when you don't know if you're going to get paid this week or not. So little mistakes like that. But the mistakes that I ran into as a builder, I don't think that I had much experience with until I became a contractor. Like
Mhm.
the things that you think you're gonna run into, like, hey, can we show up to work on time, please? Like you show up to work 15 minutes early and like no one's there. And you're like, I thought I had a crew. Did everyone quit in the night? Like, what happened here? And it's like 2 minutes till a truck rolls up, and like then guys are hemming and hawing and talking. You're like, okay, I don't want to be that guy, but I have to be that guy, right? The homeowner's like looking out his window, like, hey, you guys what I hire these guys to do here. And it's like, okay, we get to show up on time 15 minutes early. We have to wear hard hats. Like, I want to see high vis. Like, it's not about like, I'm sorry you don't like them, but it's a safety here. We're doing,
Mhm.
elevated stuff with heavy beams. I don't want anyone to get hit in the head. So I guess the problems, the goods and bads examples that I have are primarily from doing this more so than being a builder. I've been pretty fortunate on all the jobs that I've been on.
Taking a break away from like nuts and bolts of stuff, but just from like your civil experience, any crazy injuries or any stuff like that?
Oh, we had an OSHA inspector come in with a broken
Okay.
arm. That
Okay.
was something that was kind of like you're the
Yeah.
guy that's inspecting it. No, me and my wife, she's had a job site injury, so she was a cabinet maker, and
Okay.
Mhm.
got left alone. And this is the issue with gloves. Sometimes the glove grabbed her, or the joiner grabbed her glove, table joiner,
Oh
about
no.
half a quarter of a second, and there's
Yep.
half a finger gone. But
Yep. Yep.
I've watched a guy in the civil industry. I no real hard injuries on job sites I've been on. There's been some near misses. I've got myself knocked off of a extension ladder when I shouldn't have been on an extension ladder in the first place with a Hilti roto hammer drilling 1 inch dowel holes into the side of a
Mhm.
Yeah.
concrete wall. That was stupid. But I watched my superintendent was walking around. It was that time where we were laying people off, and I watched a guy see his check coming and fall off a ladder with his bags on to not get laid
Oh
off.
no.
That was
Oh no.
it's like, what are you doing, man? I mean,
Yeah.
it worked, I guess, for like a month, but they'll find a reason to lay you off if they want to lay you off.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you take all this commercial experience that you have and kind of translate. I mean, obviously, there's a lot more process, a lot more things that are consistent in the commercial world, checklists, things like that.
Oh yeah.
And then you apply that to residential, where it's usually kind of a little more cowboyish, at least
Oh man.
typically. Yeah. Yeah. And that really works for you, I can
It
imagine.
helped a lot, probably.
Yeah, no, it is. No, you have to, I mean, being in such a diverse like category of builders in my experience has been huge. I do like the cowboy reference, especially being in Montana, because there are some Wild West things that you'd like that wouldn't fly in Oregon that they're doing in Montana, and vice versa. And I think that where you're at and what you're doing and the scale of that project defines that, but you create more parameters and more rules to follow the more you get into that commercial and even the bigger scale projects that you do. And I think that as a contractor, that's my responsibility to establish how wild it may get. Like, I think the most wild we've ever gotten was like everyone wore basketball shorts one day when it was really hot, and it was like, all right, it's all fun and games, but let's please wear pants to work. I don't shouldn't have to say it. But one of those problems, like you shouldn't have to say it's not a big deal, but we
You get the
are
looks from the
construction
guys
workers.
sometimes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, or like the homeowner will come out. Like we had this amazing homeowner we worked for this year. We did a pretty big remodel out on the coast, and she'd like buy the guy a Subway. But it's like, if you guys weren't doing such high quality work right now, it would be really difficult to take you seriously. Have a guy wearing like cowboy boots and basketball shorts, and like come to work. It's like, hey, I get it. We're trying to be comfortable. We're all camping out here on the coast, but let's please, maintain this level of professionalism. Long pants, please, and boots, and the whole 9 yards.
Why I'm curious about like the early day a year ago, right? Back in
Mhm,
October, when you're, at this decision moment of, hey, what am I going to do? I just got laid off. How did you, I mean, what did that season, like that first couple, because you're still in the early days, you're still in the first
mhm.
year. Obviously, you're still building and creating a company and forever will be. But I'm
Yep.
curious about, just that moment for you of like, what did that look like? And how'd you make the leap from, what was the first thing you did? Did you sit down and you're
Yeah.
like, hey, here's my mission, here's my vision, here's what I want to do, here's my business plan? Or were you like, hey, I'm just going to go one step in front of the next and I'm gonna call some people that I know? How'd you get work? I'm curious about
So
that
yeah, that's a
season.
great question. That's a great question because the experience is somewhat unique. I didn't have a contractor background, and I'm not from this part of Oregon. I'd only been here for about a year and a half, so I didn't. And I'm relatively, antisocial on that level. Like I'm good at communicating, but I don't have like a friend group. It's me and my wife. We do our thing, and that's always the way it's kind of been for us. That's why I went to Montana. So when I did get laid off, being in the union, I had options. So like I could get on the out of work list, buy a Honda Civic, and go to Eugene for work, which is like 2 hours north one way, which it is what it
Mhm.
is. And I did think about that. But I knew a guy who was a contractor, a very poor contractor. I learned later that needed some help. So I figured, hey, this guy might have some access. So I talked to someone that he knew. They got the ball rolling on getting a CCB. And it was kind of just this experiment, right? Like, what's gonna
Mhm.
happen? Are we gonna what's the worst that could happen? Worst that happens is I buy myself another month of work, right? That was kind of the idea at the time. And I did enjoy the independence, but also being in the union, you're used to having time off. So it wasn't like I was overly stressed. It was like, all right, it's a slow time. I'll get it figured out. I can claim unemployment if I want. But I worked for this guy, and he was terrible. Like he wouldn't show up at all. Like his clients were like coming to me like my second day asking me questions. And I'm like, dude, I'm just here to help him build his fence. Like I've only known the guy for a couple of weeks, so I go to help him do this bathroom, and he's just the shady dude, and the homeowner is a really nice guy. He's actually a friend of mine to this day, and I just told the guy I was working with, like, hey, I'm not gonna be putting up with this anymore. I'm gonna either pursue my own endeavors or figure something out, but I'm not gonna associate myself with what you're doing. And he quit that job, and the homeowner fired him off that job and called me and said, hey, are you interested in remodeling this
Mhm.
140 square foot marble bathroom? And I was like, that was like two bathrooms we're converting into one. I was like, sure, I'll figure it out. Right. So we went out there, and I have framing experience. I've built these really nice things in Montana, these good structures. So I just showed up, went to work every day, and built this structure. He designed it with me, and it was kind of like he just paid my hours, and I got licensed, got it all official, got my first contract with him, finished it all up. Just got done doing his deck and a second bathroom just not even a week ago now. So
Cool.
it was just kind of just like I started doing it. I started getting leads. I tried to do the Angie's List thing. I don't necessarily recommend it to most folks. It does give you the experience to get out there and communicate with potential clients. I would give it that, but get a web presence going, get your name out there, put your business cards at your post office, start talking to people. Don't be afraid to take a day, drive around, and just like go to like a big commercial site and say, hey, do you guys need a siding company, and get a couple guys built some hardy board, whatever it might be. I don't listen to many podcasts, but one I did hear said that 80% of good, productive, quality business is marketing and communication. So
Mhm.
if you have a good product that you can stand behind, you can get yourself work just by making that conversation, make the call, talk to some people, talk to some agencies, get your name out there. And don't give up on it either, right? There's a lot
Yeah.
of discouraging moments doing this stuff, especially your first year when you don't know anyone that but I prayed a lot, that was big for
Yeah.
me. I'm not
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
big into that on like go ahead and talk about it all the time, but that was something that, I just lean back and say, there's a plan here,
Yeah.
right? And it's either
Yeah.
going to be being a contractor or being a carpenter. So
Yeah.
we'll just
Amen to
keep,
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, one day at a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think that was one thing that I noticed, because I think we got introduced with you, to you about a year ago. I think was the
Yep,
right when you'd started. And I will say the level of professionalism, I was like, dude, this guy is doing some things. The fact that you had
I
a
appreciate
logo,
it.
the fact that you know what I mean? I know, you invested heavily in estimating and making your proposals look good. And, you had a website and things like that. So most people don't think that way. They don't think future minded when it comes to the marketing side of things. They're like, well, I just need the next job a little bit. But I think that future vision that you had early on, I don't know where that came from, because maybe it was what you saw in some commercial space and just how they were marketing. I don't know exactly, but I will say that was one thing that stood out. I was like, wow, you don't see that very often that the guys will prioritize that piece of the business
Mhm.
early on.
Having the hustle to go out and execute on it too, because a lot of people can see an idea, but
Yeah.
then sometimes, to your point, Wyatt, like you can get discouraged in those moments because you see people doing fancy, impressive things, and you're like, well, I don't measure up to that. It's almost being like that's hard to do, and instead of just like, well, what's the next best thing I
Yeah.
can do in front of me, and just get it done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to be an opportunist. When you see an opportunity to take it, and you have to have the mind for competition too. You can't be discouraged by what people are doing around you. Like you have to see that. And what I see in my area is I see a lot of established contractors that I'm not saying they're bad at what they're doing by any means, but I believe with my experience, like I could easily do that. So why am I not doing that? And recognizing that because I didn't have a social connection in this area, 'cause I needed people to be able to see this company in order for us to get jobs. So I felt like that from my own perspective was the direction to go. I needed to um look at this from a viewpoint of how if I were right down the road, how would I find my company? Right. If I'm on the other side of the county, how am I going to find Blacktail Builders? Right. And
Mhm.
then identifying what it is that Blacktail Builders is, right? Like, are you a concrete company? Are you a remodeling? It's like I went from being a custom builder last year to we're doing redoing our logo, redoing the website, redoing everything because I believe that that represents at least in the eyes of our clients, what this company is. Like we live in such a digital world that
Yep.
your website essentially is your gallery, it's your showcase. Like back in
Yep.
Montana, actual companies will have a showroom, and some places still do that in cities. I think a lot with you think about how many contractors you're seeing at Home Depot, like where am I going to go to see your work or your work? So it's kind of like this website needs to represent what we are and be accessible to people and find that market that we exist within. So we went from custom builder to we're just full service construction. Like we do concrete. Well, I live in a super small town. I live in a town of like 1,500 people, um, and it's a mill town. So my
Mhm.
original goal, which is I realize unrealistic to achieve in the first year, is I want to get contracts to build these mill upgrades. I want to do the heavy duty concrete jobs. I want to redo, 4 miles of siding. It's like not because that's like this glorious, glamorous thing, but like this is my community. I want to be a part of it. On top of that, I
Mhm.
mean, these are good connections to have. They're good jobs to have. At the same time, we do also high end remodels. So we're full service construction. We'll do everything
Yeah.
and all of the we serve our areas. And if you don't have that vision, like who you are, what lane are you going to be in, I feel like it's gonna be very difficult to
Yeah.
establish your image online.
For sure.
So if you look at some of the projects you're doing or have done, have you identified something that you're like, that's my project? Like those are the things that you really love doing as opposed to, versus others. I mean, you talk about siding
Yeah,
or the
yeah,
decks, bathrooms. I'm like, I guess you can get so diluted to doing so many different things that, which is sometimes what the customer wants. But do you find like, hey, this is
yeah.
a spot we really clean up in?
Yeah, I think that there are certain fields of the construction industry that everyone wants to be a part of because it's easy to clean up in that sense. I also think there are
Give me an
certain
example of one,
aspects.
Wyatt. Give
Side
me examples.
everyone can side. Siding is what
Okay.
everyone wants to do, right? You know that
Okay.
from
Yeah.
construction, I would presume.
Yeah.
Like, are you
Yeah.
gonna take the
Siding and
or
painting. Yeah.
concrete? Yeah, or
Yeah.
concrete even. I think that some people do it. In my area, everyone wants to be an excavator, do a bunch of
Okay.
dirt work. It is
Mhm.
what it is.
Buy a big machine.
That's my least
Yeah.
favorite thing to do, personally.
Right.
I don't mind doing concrete. I don't like concrete either. But we're good at it. That was a lot of my
Mhm.
background doing civil stuff. That's kind of that. But I think that, yeah, to answer that question, I think that there's a lot of work that you can be good at and achieve at. I don't necessarily like doing bathrooms because you have to get a lot of people involved. What I'd like to find, like I said, like, and we're potentially about to be working on one right now. I don't want to disclose it before we sign a contract, but our first custom home. So that's pretty cool. But I think doing actual carpentry based construction is
Yeah.
what I think is the best thing to do and the most fun to do, because you have the most freedom of design. I like working with wood. I like to be able to take something either rustic, ranch style design, or even something modern and do something nice. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh, I can't wait to do sheetrock every day, but some guys kick butt at it, and
Right.
that's good for them. For us, it's frame to finish carpentry.
You
Nice.
like the carpentry. You like the woodwork side of things.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. I think that I like that just because I feel like I resonate a lot with that from what I did in Montana, right? Everyone wants
Mhm.
raw timbers, timber
Yep.
framing,
Mhm.
reclaimed siding, that really nice, like, forget one of your guests, Brent, I believe,
Yeah,
make
Brent
it
Hall.
look like it's been here for 500 years. It's like that was everything we did in Montana. Like, we would
Yeah.
take a piece of, and there's times where it got so cold that everything shut down that I went and worked at a reclaimed lumber yard where we were taking fence boards and corral boards that were hundreds of years old, run them through a bandsaw, and then send them to the shop to make siding. And for the
Wow.
three and a
Yeah.
half months that I worked there, every single piece of siding that we made only went to one house, some giant
Wow.
behemoth home in North Montana. It was like, what an experience.
That's
But yeah,
cool.
the woodworking is huge. That's what, if I could, you know, find one thing that we could do it. But it's a hard sell, right? Because what's available. I mean,
Yeah.
if everyone wants to put up siding and everyone wants party board, you're not going to be as good at going out there and convincing someone that they want, shiplap,
Yeah.
or tongue and groove siding. So
Yeah. Switching away from some of the building side of things to more like routines, and have you identified like a really good structure? Because I mean, you mentioned earlier about wearing so many different hats, but have you identified a good routine for yourself of, you know, what do you do on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or do you chunk out different times of the day, or like how do you manage 15 different or whatever the different hats
Yeah.
you have to
yeah,
wear?
Yeah, I think just being organized and having a structure in general is important, and having that, I have that mindset that, as long if it changes, which it's going to change at some point, stay within that structure. So we only schedule bids for a couple days of every week now. Like, I'm not going to schedule a bid on Friday or Monday, right? There's too much to catch up on. Um, since we work in two different counties now, we'll do like a Wednesdays will be in Douglas County, and then Thursdays will be in Coos County. That allows us to juggle that. That also allows us to consolidate projects that are in these areas. Creating, I feel like, because everything revolves around the work that you do, and that work that you do is essentially what the work that your guys are doing. So creating a schedule that I think is good working hours is important. Like, always worked at 7 in the morning until 3:30. But what I've done is created and I got this from a guy I worked with, 8 to 4:30. You have better light hours. Guys are, if you think about it, you show up to work 7 o'clock. Sometimes people are still waking up. So, we start at 8, we get done at 4:30, we get the daylight. And that allows me 2 hours before everyone starts working to get myself organized. That way, if I'm needed on site in the morning right when we start, then I'm going to be there without having to put things behind me. And then, you said this specifically in one of your podcasts that I have taken to heart, because my first 6 months I didn't do this. You have to designate a window of time for your family. You can't just, like, I watched my son go from 3 months old to 9 months old from my office, the
Mhm.
home office, just working. You guys saw it, grinding on the congenius, making it all happen. And as essential as that is, right? Because you have to do that. You have to remind yourself that, hey, this is why I'm doing this, and
Yep.
give yourself 4 hours in the evening, whatever it may be, to be there. because that's refreshing. And then,
Mm.
you know, trying not to work on the weekends. I mean, try, but I think you also have to understand how much work you're trying to create for yourself and then build a schedule around that. Because there's
Yeah.
plenty of Saturdays that here's exactly where I'm sitting, doing this thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
being structured, being scheduled, everyone takes lunch at this time, including myself.
Mhm.
Everyone takes a break at this time if you need it, including myself. That way, too, if you do need to contact your people, then you contact them when they're not with their bags on a ladder.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, I like the making intentional space because it's like there's always something that'll fill it. It's like a vacuum, like there's always something that's going to grab the
Yeah.
time if you don't purpose it for something. So I
Yeah.
love that.
I'm
Yep.
curious, I'm kinda going back maybe to the
We're bouncing around, Wyatt.
you took
That's
us
fine. I
away
love
from
it, man. That's what it's all
the
about.
build question, but I'm curious, you talked about how this year you're going into more like, hey, full service contracting, everything, anything you need, kinda one-stop shop, it sounds like.
Yep.
On our podcast, sometimes we talk about, how you can't be great at everything. So how are you supplementing that, like with people on your team, or are you subcontracting out work, or like what's the structure of that to where you can actually fulfill excellent work across the board and offer to your client that you're a one-stop shop?
I think what's important on that is to have, like, I would never take a job that I couldn't lead and do physically. And I think that that's important, because as a leader, you have to set that precedent. Like, and I've learned just in this last year, like, I can sit in a machine all day long. I don't enjoy that. That's not what we're going to do. We're not an excavation service. It's going to be cheaper for someone who owns a mini excavator to come in and do a
Mhm.
quality job than we are. I go back and forth with concrete, just
Yeah.
because if I know guys are going to be more skilled than us, I have no problem giving that out if they can do it more efficiently. I think you cannot come into this say, I'm going to net every penny that
Yeah.
comes into this company. I think that you have to establish what you can and can't do realistically and do well realistically. And I think that is by knowing the people that you're working with, knowing the ins and outs of the job, and then having the ability to execute that start to finish.
Mhm.
Like, I talk to contractors because people look for jobs that didn't make it, if that makes sense. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of what that is I don't actually have the skills to do this, or I have all the skills to do this and I don't have the mentality to do this. And now I'm just looking for something to do. And I think that if you make the right decisions by taking the jobs that you're like, don't bid the job that you don't want to do. I think that's huge, right? Because then you're going to
Yeah.
find yourself in that position where, oh, now I'm way over my head. I don't know what I'm doing. I have all this money to spend on this, but where do I start? I think that with excavation, I kind of learned that where it's like, I'll I'll punch in a road, I'll do all that, I'll move dirt, but it's like I don't want to dig out a foundation. I have my time is much more valuable doing something else, and someone could come in here and do this for us for less price at a
Yep.
better quality, and I don't want my name on this bad product. So just
Yeah.
having that self-recognition to say, hey, I'm not good at concrete, I'm not going to do concrete.
Yeah, that's good.
So you are saying no in all of that, which I think
Right.
is important. You are
Yeah.
saying, hey, these are the
Yeah.
things that we really are good at, and that's not a project I want to take on. So I
Yeah.
think
Well,
that's how you're managing that, right?
yeah, and defining your company. I think this goes back to one of the other points. Like, are you a remodel service? Are you a framing company? Like, as a full service construction company, that doesn't mean that we have to be the only ones doing the entirety of the project. It means like I can sub out, the sheetrock if I want to. I can sub out
Mhm.
the concrete. That's still you're doing the work. Define it like as a general contractor. I think this is
Yep.
from inherently from my commercial experience. What's the GC do on a commercial project?
Right.
Right? They hang out in offices, they walk
Real
around.
circle.
They have a couple
Yeah.
laborers that
Project.
clean up, and
Mhm.
that's that. But you're netting a percentage that keeps your overhead and pays your guys and gets you moving, and you get the prestige of the job. And now you're no longer a full service construction company. Now you're an on-site management company, right? And
Yeah.
then you're able to scale that direction if you wanted to.
I'm curious, what was the hardest thing in the last year for you to learn, to grow in? Obviously, that's a huge question because there's probably like 100 things that have been hard and that you've learned. But what would you say has been the hardest thing in starting your business?
That is a really tough question, because there has I would be easy. It would be hard. It would be easier to answer what's been easy, right?
Mhm.
Because like a handful of things. I think the biggest challenge that I've had, if I could phrase it that
Yeah.
way, would be taking people at face value. And this, I don't mean to come across from like any sort of cynical perspective here, but I I misrepresented myself one time when looking for a job, and it was brought to my attention. It was easily corrected, and I became a much better carpenter because of that. So when I hire people and hire, I went through probably 23 people this last year. When I hire people, when they tell you what they can do does not ever mean that. And differentiate, like not having all of that faith in people all at once has been the most difficult thing. Especially when you're going for multiple projects, if you want to be able to put your faith in people, and then if you do that incorrectly, then you'll do what I did in a couple of projects, which is now I'm building 2 projects at once because the
Yeah.
people that I hired can't actually do what they said they can do, make up 100 different excuses about it, and now you're stuck having to get this stuff done on this timeline pretty much single-handedly, and that was super difficult for me. One, because I had to learn that twice essentially, and then the one time I was able to actually come in and fix the problems and rebuild it, and the other time, I got a call from a homeowner saying, "Hey, all this stuff is messed up. I need, you come back and fix it." And you're like thinking like, how is it messed up? And you go there and it's like the guys that said they could do something, either they, forgot who they were one day and just did everything wrong, or they said a bunch of stuff and you believed in them, and now this is on you to fix, and you're going to take 100% of the profit from that project and fix it because that's the right thing to do. But that's a hard pill to swallow, and it definitely hits your pride, and I think that issue alone and just, having a competent and quality team, like, how do you vet that out? That's been incredibly difficult for me, because I don't use a hiring service either. I'm old
Yeah.
school in that where, I'll put an ad on Craigslist, or I'll, you know, see someone that's, walking around. Like, I had a guy working for me that, ran into some guy on the side of the road who was asking for money, offered him a job, and this dude was one of the best laborers we ever had because, he just needed an opportunity. Whereas I put an ad on Craigslist and, have someone that's done everything in the world 500 times and is the best at it, that shows up to work and he left his hammer at his mom's house, and, he forgot his boots at home. And,
Yeah.
you say, "Can you build a wall?" And you come in and there's like a triple top plate and a single bottom plate. And you're like, what in the heck is this? And it's like, deal with that while you're dealing with everything else, and
Yeah.
that, I think that would be the hardest thing I've dealt with. And then snowballing effect with clients is another thing. Like a little tiny thing, like if you let one little issue happen that isn't even a big issue to you, that might seem like a big issue to someone else because they just don't understand. If you don't nurture that
Yeah.
relationship like in depth, it's going to create a snowball. And we had that happen
Mhm.
with that same client that I went back and fixed stuff with. It was one little thing happened, and then now every little thing's a
Yep.
problem, and that's
Yeah.
difficult to deal with too because you don't know. I mean, when you're a builder, it's a completely different world than when you're running the work out here.
In hiring people, have you is it still a struggle in weeding people out? Are you developing some hacks involved in that? What's your process
Oh
look like
yeah.
today?
So right now I ask a lot of really technical questions. I ask like people if they know like the like degrees of like a roof pitch, if they say that they know how to build a house. I'll ask them what like some standard things are. I'll ask them like, what do you order like what do you order concrete as opposed to in a truck, as opposed to in a pump? You're gonna go 3,000 to 350. Little things like that. That's like, if you've been around this a few times, you're gonna know this. Whereas if you're BSing, then you may not have the answer to this. Also, just what I've learned, especially as a new company, and I reflect this to Congenius a lot and to my son a lot. Like, I started this company and started using Congenius. My son was 3 months old. I started this company, so you can't leave it alone. Like, I can't leave my son alone, right? Or he's going to get into something, right? He's a little over a year. This company, you can't leave it alone either. So when you do hire somebody, you need to make sure, or you hire a crew, or you have a you break a crew up, you need to be there. You need to direct it, because sometimes it's not the people that are working for you's fault that they've been taught the wrong way about everything. And if you're not there to correct it, then you're the only one at fault for not raising it, right? Like, this is your
Yep.
company. So when it comes to
I
hiring,
love
you
that
need to
call
be
out.
that guy.
That's really
Great
good.
point.
Yeah. So many times it's so easy to blame somebody else. Just
Yeah.
like, man, good help is tough to find instead of realizing.
We were talking about that today
Yeah.
even.
Yeah.
There was like some CEO that fired 99 people from his team or something like that. I don't know if you heard about that. And
Yeah.
we're like, you don't just lose 99 people. Like there's had to
Well,
have been
and what's amazing about it is 99 out of 110 people he
right.
fired.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like
Yeah.
he had 1,000. He fired
He either had a reason to fire them.
yeah 95% of his people in one day. And I'm thinking, well, the problem started before they didn't show up to your meeting. Like,
Right. Yeah.
Yep. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we've like I said, I had 4 projects going midsummer, and I went from having 4 crews to 1 crew in a week. I just,
Yeah.
it was, and I think that's also one of the hardest things. Like, if you have a heart, the last thing you want to do is let people go
Totally.
because
yeah,
you, and this is what's hard about being an owner of a company is like you cannot associate on that level of friendship. For like I want to have camaraderie with the guys. Like we had our job in Coos Bay after we after we broke it down to one team where we're all staying at our property on the coast and we're having a good time at night and we're doing our thing and you remind yourself in that at some point the fun might end and someone might make a mistake or do something stupid or quit on their own accord and that's that separation. So letting
Mhm.
people go is hard. That confrontation of, someone's gonna be upset that they just lost their job. You've been there, so you have to be that guy.
Yeah.
That's difficult, but I think a good leader has to make those decisions. And you have to make them without emotion or bias, and that's super important. If I could give anyone advice too when it comes to this, like if your idea of a evening is to come home and watch TV or play video games, then you probably shouldn't be a contractor. My spare time, I like to read books that help me be a better leader. Like I have The Art of War sitting next to me all the time because what you learn from people that have had high caliber leadership jobs, and then as someone that runs a company, if you read psychiatry or psychology, understanding the way that people like to think and like to act
Yep.
really will help you make decisions in real time if you can be retentive of like these characteristics, these archetypes, and these ways that people are. And that alone has helped me retain the crew that I have right now. Like I've got the best crew I had, and everyone gets along really well, and we're all really, really doing some good work together, right? I'm really excited, and we got some great projects on the docket right now.
That's awesome.
that's got to
So
feel good,
awesome.
brother. I mean, when you have
Oh
a
Congrats.
good
man,
crew.
oh it is. I mean, I'm able to sit here and talk to you guys, so that's something.
That's awesome.
and you're not worried about something blowing up.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
just
My
thinking
guys are two
somebody
hours away.
wow.
Wow.
A
Yeah.
guy told me the ship sails best when the captain's on deck, and and I, and it's a really so true, and I've seen that pan out so many times, and I think I've kind of challenged myself because there's sort of this scale of a company where you get to mid-level management where they can be the people that are more or less the captains and you're the admiral. And I
Yep.
like the analogy of basically being if you don't have captains of the ship, you are that captain. Like you
Right.
need to be there and you need to be on that ship. But if you get to admiral status, you need to have captains. And
Yeah.
so if you got 5 crews, you need to have somebody that can be at all those crews and running them, or it just doesn't work. Like you,
Well,
or you're
you have to find that too, and that finding the
Right.
leaders is the hardest thing
yeah,
to do,
right,
right?
Totally.
Because
sometimes
if
growing
everyone
them
was a
too.
leader, well,
Yeah,
yeah, well, and getting them to dial in because there's different calibers of that. I think inherently most people are followers, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like that, it's 100% necessary for like human society to do like anything productive is to have that chain of command on some level. Um, but identifying like what the leader archetype is and like the human like psychological perspective, like what is a leader, right? Like you have like some people don't even know they're leaders, and if someone doesn't want to be a leader, they could have the best leadership skills. They're not going to do the job for you. So you have to find that person that wants to be a leader, that has the ability to lead, that then also has the skills to do the job if you're not around. So then
Mhm.
you have to kind of cater what project you put them on. Like, is this person capable or not? And, having that dynamic is sometimes difficult and takes a lot of attention, like on-site attention to, make sure that the person you put into this position is actually capable of doing 100% of the job you need them to do.
Mhm.
And that the people that are working under them are going to listen to what they're doing and have the ability to follow that direction.
Yeah.
there are a lot of people that are really good leaders and they don't know it yet.
Yep.
Being able to call them to that is something that when you identify, like, well, that person has skill, they have ability, and being able to call them that out of them. And then you have a lot of other people that want to be leaders and they
Can't
shouldn't
be.
be. They
Yeah.
don't have the
Yep.
experience
Yep.
and skill yet.
Yeah,
It's
or you
something.
have the people that they're really good at leading and they're really good at doing the job. And we've run into this a handful of times. A couple of guys we've hired, and they're great, right? But outside of work, their habits are so counterproductive and like self-destructive that they show up for 2 months and then they dwindle down to do the very bare minimum and not get fired. And you're like, man, like 2 months ago you were like installing like 5 skylights in a day perfectly, blasting it out, and now you're showing up 5 minutes before we're starting, complaining, just having bad attitude. And it's like, you know I think that you, like I said, to find that individual that's you, or like that's me, or that was you, or that was me on job sites is, it's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to take you being patient with the hiring process. Like, you're going to go through people. If you think, like I thought when I had my first crew, like, here we are, boys, we're ready to go, and then we're like, you realize like in a month later, like everyone's gone. Like, this is a terrible idea.
I
Yeah.
think everyone that
Yeah.
starts a business has that exact experience,
Yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
cycling through the first 10 people and like, how is it that hard?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Why are
what
there
the
no
heck
good
is going
people?
on? Yeah.
Right? Is it me? Is it them? And
Yeah.
they all sound so confident. I remember this one carpenter who interviewed, I can do this, I can do that. He sounded like it was God's gift to my crew, like it was,
Yep.
I mean,
Oh,
we could
man.
do no wrong. And then the guy, like your point, doesn't even know what a hammer is. It's like, well, how could it
Yeah.
be that much of a tactical size illusion?
Well, that guy'd be a really good salesman, right? That's the idea. Like they're good at selling themselves. So
Yeah,
maybe,
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, bring him on there.
Set up a new role.
Yeah, right, exactly. How do you
But
yeah, right, well, then again, would you want that kind of
We don't want
deceptive
liars,
sales?
okay?
no,
We
no, and that's
want
the thing. I
educators.
I think there's a fine line there too, though, where like I've met, and this is just from doing this. Like, I've met individuals that like they believe that. Like, they'll tell you they're 100% everything, and I maybe not on like that, maybe not at like midnight looking at the mirror, but like on some level, like when you call them out, it's like, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, dude, like that's not the right hanger for that joist, like
Huh?
like
Yeah,
we,
right.
yeah, exactly. What do you, I mean, like, or like, hey man, can we please use levels? Like, I've been doing it like this for 15 years. Like, okay, that's great, that's awesome. Like, I had a guy argue with me a couple months ago about a laser. I just don't trust it. It's like, okay, well, it's
I do.
self-leveling. Yeah, like and unfortunately, buddy, I do trust this. So I'm asking you to use it because it's faster. And then,
Mhm,
like a couple times later, I see him out there at the 8 foot level trying to spam big timbers. I'm like, dude, put the laser on it. Just listen to me here. And it's like, I haven't
Mhm.
been doing this. Like, okay, dude, look, it's one button. It does two things.
mhm,
Put it up here, match it. And I had a moment. I was trying to laugh about it. I was like, hey, because I'm on site this day. I'm like, all right, here's the deal. Put the laser on. I want everyone to mark the laser lines across it. Get the laser reader out. And then this guy, grab the level, go around the whole thing. And if it's true, I don't want to hear a single thing about the laser again. And right on. And it's like, all right, I'll trust the laser. It's like, thank you. It just took
There you
that.
go.
Right. And then when he goes to the next job, I hope he's like, hey, do you guys have a laser? Because that'd be
Yeah,
great.
that would be great.
You converted them,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like use the technology, man.
Reminds me of this time when we had a guy I sort of felt sorry for. He, picked up a bunch of scrap metal we had, and he said, "If you need any work done, let me know. I can do anything." I've heard that before. You have too, Wyatt, and you
Oh
don't
man, once
believe
or
a word of
twice.
it. So I asked him, "Well, what is your skill? Like, I know you understand. I understand you can do everything, but what is the one thing that you're really good at?" Well, tile work. I'm a really good at tile, and what else? Painting. Okay, those are your two things. Like those, the top two skills, painting and tile. So I had a painting project, and I thought, well, I'll give him the small little job to do. And strangely enough, he showed up for the first day, did some patching work, disappeared for a few days. And what's interesting is he sent me a text a couple weeks later, and he's like, "Can you pray for me? I really need work." And I thought, buddy, like I would send you so many referrals. You would never need work ever again.
if
Not to
you
oversell
get the
myself, but
job.
nonetheless, I mean, like, there's so many people that need a painter, and
Yeah.
part of it was just the character. And I think you touched on that earlier. Why it's just the character, it's limiting the character of, and that's one of the reasons why some people can't run their own company because they just
Yeah.
can't show up. They just
Mhm.
can't be diligent. Like the guy you were talking about, worked 5 months and then or 2 months, whatever it was, and then sort of like, what happened to this guy?
Yeah.
He shifted into something else.
So Ben and I completed the paint job.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
there
One
you
morning it
go.
was like, all right, here's a paint job.
I'll come behind
Here's
you
a
with a
paintbrush,
brush.
sister.
Yeah. No, and I mean, you want to do the best by people, but I
Yeah.
think when it comes to running a company successfully too, is like you guys identify that individual might not even identify, the issues that he's dealing with are, self-created on that level too, where
Yeah.
being I did listen to some of the other older podcasts that you guys have done just to kind of brief myself for this. And I mean, you got to prepare, right?
Yeah.
But
You are
I
prepared, buddy.
Hey man, this is me. Like this is me in the car. So no, I look at it from that same perspective where like you have to have the highest level of management skills and you have to have the highest level of discipline. If you're not disciplined with your bags on, you're not going to be disciplined if you're creating your own schedule for yourself. Like if you're the guy that can't show up to work 10 minutes early every day, then you're sure as heck not going to be the guy that wakes up and manages his own day every single day, 7 days a week through holidays when you're out of town. Like how many times I'm trying to like take some time for myself, but then I find myself on my phone the entire time. Like even last night I thought I had an hour and the next thing you know it's like 6:45 and I'm still on the computer like, dude,
Yeah.
I'm trying to sell a custom home here. Sorry baby. I'd love to hang out with you right now, but like one of those things. And I think having a supportive wife, having a supportive family is huge in this,
Yeah.
because if you don't have support, you're gonna find yourself pretty alone doing this, and it's gonna be a lot more demanding than if you have, people you can lean on. I think your team's the same way. Like we just hired an office manager essentially who's like, I don't know this field enough. So my job description at first was like secretary and now it's like assistant project manager.
Yeah.
So like there's like what do I need at the moment? And it's like, well, I need
Mhm.
someone that can like pretty much learn this, and it's been a pretty good fit so far, but you need people that have that management. Another asset that I think I have right now is through this weeding out, and this is completely random. This was not orchestrated. Is everyone that works for me minus one guy had at one point their own business.
Hmm.
Wow.
And what I've been able to do is use what I've learned from Sun Tzu ultimately. And if everyone shows up with the same animating spirit every day,
Mm.
then we're all here to drive that same agenda. And what I've been trying to do on like a psychological level is show up with that intention of like, hey, we're all together, we're all doing this. This company is bigger than me. This company is bigger than you guys. And I look at our area, which is a rural, somewhat impoverished area with a lot of guys turning down work, a lot of guys doing really poor work, a lot of up and coming contractors that don't really have the ambition to scale and grow. And it's like, what do we want? Right. And if I want this big company that runs all this work in this area, then I need my guys to want to be a part of that. And
Yeah.
that's more than just, a paycheck on that level, but we're all here to get paid. So how do you animate that? And I think people that have had their own businesses that had failed or had stopped for one point or another, that genuinely tried and wanted that mentality is easy to nurture in this
Mhm.
new business, if that makes sense.
One other angle to that too, Wyatt, is that those guys have a tremendous amount of respect for you because they know how hard that
Yeah.
job is, as
Exactly.
opposed to just looking for you to say, "Oh, sort it out, boss," and
Yeah.
instead of being
It's
like,
true.
"Wow, we're on the same team," and when they know how hard it is and respect your skills there too. So I love what you're doing there, and have that type of team is awesome. To hear the perspective of somebody starting off in a business and getting as far along as
Yeah.
you had in a year, I mean, it's inspiring, it's
Yeah.
encouraging. Keep up the great work,
Yeah.
fantastic work, Wyatt.
Way
Yeah.
to go, man.
Appreciate it, guys.
It really is cool.
Where can people
Yeah.
find some of your work?
That's hard right now. Oh, I haven't had social media since I was in high school. And now in my 30s, it's like trying to jump back on that. We're trying to put more on the website. Like I said, we have a
MySpace is not the thing anymore, Wyatt.
yeah,
No.
I
Yeah.
know what. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. LinkedIn or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're working on getting social media going. We're working
Yeah.
on revamping the whole website image, doing all that kind of stuff. But if people want to get a hold of us, I know that we're the only contractor on your show in Oregon. We do work everywhere in Oregon, man. We'll go north, south, east to west. We'll make it happen. So if you have questions, give us a call. Go on our website, blacktailbuilders at gmail.com. That's our email, blacktailbuildersllc.com. Hit us up and you can see some of the work we do there. And thanks again for having me on, you guys. I really appreciate it.
I love
Love
it.
it. Thanks, Wyatt.
We'll talk to you
Yeah.
soon.
Yep. Take care.